It all began with a bang. A SWAT team stormed the wrong apartment, and what came next uncovered how far the system would go to cover its mistakes. Theron Duval had heard doors break down before, the sharp crack of wood splitting under force, but never in his own place, never here in Tucson, Arizona. The sound came fast and loud, shattering the calm evening like a sudden thunderstorm. Before Theron could move, a burst of blue light shot through the air. Linden gasped, her body jerking as the taser hit her. She dropped to the floor, shaking all over. "Linden!" Theron called, his voice low but clear above the shouting and crashing. The SWAT team poured in, weapons raised, barking orders that bounced off the walls of their small apartment. Their faces were tight, eyes wide with tension. But they were after the wrong people. Officer Josh Quarles' finger curled around his trigger. When Linden moved, reaching for her phone, he saw only a threat. The taser fired again without warning. Theron didn't scream. His words came out steady, almost cold. "That's my wife you just tased." The room froze. Quarles' grip on his rifle slipped a little. Another officer, Rhett Salm, muttered something under his breath, glancing back and forth between Theron and Linden. The air felt heavy, pressing in. Theron knelt beside Linden, who was still trembling, eyes wide and scared. He turned her gently, keeping his hands calm, though inside he felt like roaring. "It's okay, Linden. I'm here," he whispered, though mostly to himself. A radio on an officer's vest crackled, a voice asking to double-check the address. Too late. Theron's thoughts raced. He'd faced danger as a soldier in the 82nd Airborne, but nothing like this. This was his home, his wife, his life, flipped upside down in seconds. "Why are you here?" he demanded, voice low but firm. Quarles swallowed, looking away. "We had a warrant for this address," he said, his voice shaking. Theron's stare turned hard. "You've got the wrong place." Another officer barked more orders, but Theron only cared about Linden. She was still trembling, breathing in quick, shallow gasps. "She needs medical help," Theron said, not asking but ordering. Ruiz, a young officer who looked genuinely worried, nodded and radioed for help. Theron stayed at Linden's side, his heart pounding. The apartment was a wreck. Broken doorframe, overturned chairs. But none of that mattered. "Theron!" Linden's voice was weak, barely there. "What's happening?" He brushed a strand of hair from her face, forcing himself to stay steady. "They made a mistake. They thought we were someone else." Her eyes darted across his face, wide with fear. "I'm here." "You're safe," he whispered, but he knew the damage was done. Their trust was gone, replaced by doubt and fear. Outside, sirens wailed, coming closer. The wrong door, the wrong people, the wrong time. And now everything was different. And the night wasn't over yet. The real fight was only starting. Paramedics came quickly, boots thudding on the broken floor. They worked calmly but fast. Theron barely noticed them. His eyes stayed on Linden. One paramedic, a kind-faced woman, knelt next to her and gently held her hand. "Ma'am, can you tell me your name?" she asked softly. Linden blinked, still shaking. "Linden," she whispered. Theron stood close, jaw tight. The paramedic looked up at him, then back at Linden. "She'll be okay, just shaken. But we recommend taking her to the hospital to be sure." Theron nodded, relief and anger mixing inside him. Relief that Linden was alive, anger that any of this had happened at all. As the paramedics packed up, Linden sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and tired. Theron hovered beside her, mind racing. The doorframe was in pieces, splinters and broken chairs scattered everywhere. A faint, burnt smell from the taser lingered. Theron. What just happened? Linden asked, her voice soft and uncertain. Theron knelt in front of her and took her hands. His eyes searched hers for strength. They made a mistake. They thought we were someone else. Linden's eyes filled with tears. But the guns, the shouting, I thought I was going to die. Theron hugged her tightly. I'm here. You're safe now, he whispered. She clung to him, her breath shaky. I never thought this could happen to us, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Theron's mind drifted back to the army, the training, the battles. He had faced danger far from home, but never like this. He looked around at the wrecked apartment, eyes landing on the busted door. This wasn't just a mistake, he said quietly. This was a failure. Someone didn't do their job. Linden nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm scared, Theron. What if it happens again? He squeezed her hands. We'll make sure it doesn't. I promise. But deep down he knew it wouldn't be easy. The officers stayed inside, talking among themselves in low voices. Theron heard bits and pieces, words like warrant, wrong address, protocol. Quarrel wouldn't meet his eyes. Theron stepped closer, his tone hard. I want answers, now. Quarrel hesitated, then nodded. We're checking the paperwork. Looks like there was an address mix-up. Theron's stare darkened. A mix-up that nearly killed my wife. Another officer, Salm, mumbled something under his breath. Theron heard every word. Is this how you do your job? Kick down doors and shoot first. Ask later? Quarrel's face turned red. We were following orders. Orders don't give you the right to hurt innocent people. Theron snapped. The room fell silent under his words. Linden slowly stood, leaning on Theron. I want to go to the hospital, she said softly. Theron nodded, helping her up. Before leaving, he faced the officers. This isn't over. Outside, the cool night air felt heavy. Police lights painted the street red and blue. Neighbors peeked through curtains, whispers spreading fast. Theron helped Linden into the car, his hands steady though his mind was racing. Hold on, he said gently as they drove away. He was already planning, already determined. They hadn't chosen this fight, but they would see it through. The hospital waiting room felt cold and empty. Theron sat beside Linden, who now wore a hospital gown, hands shaking in his. The harsh lights buzzed overhead, but they didn't notice. Their whole world was right here, waiting for answers. Finally, a detective walked in, clipboard ready, eyes careful but professional. Mr. Duval, I'm Detective Harper, she said, sitting down across from them. I'm here to find out exactly what happened at your apartment. Theron's jaw tightened. I want to know how you people could break into my home and hurt my wife, all because of a mistake. Detective Harper nodded slowly. I understand why you're angry. We're going over the warrant and the information that led the SWAT team to your door. Linden's voice was quiet, but strong. How does something like this even happen? How do you mix up one house with another? Harper let out a long breath. It looks like there was a mistake in the address on the warrant. They were after a suspect in a nearby neighborhood, but the paperwork was wrong. Theron's eyes narrowed. That's not good enough. Someone has to answer for this. Harper looked him straight in the eye. I agree. That's why we're doing a full investigation. We don't want this to ever happen again. Theron glanced at Linden. She gave him a small, tired nod. They both knew this was only the start. Over the next few days, the investigation dragged on. Officers came in and out, took statements, checked the damage, and watched the body cam videos. The footage showed it all, the quick choices, the confusion, the moment Linden reached for her phone. An innocent move that nearly got her killed. Theron watched every second, his old army instincts kicking in. He noticed every pause, every misstep, every rushed command. It all pointed to one thing: a terrible mistake. One evening, while Linden rested, Theron sat alone at the kitchen table. The weight of everything sat heavy on his shoulders. He pulled out his phone and called an old friend from the army. "Jake, it's Theron," he said when the line connected. "I need your advice. The police raided my place by mistake. They tased Linden. Now they're investigating, but I don't trust them to do it right." Jake's voice was calm but serious. "Man, that's rough. The system doesn't admit it's wrong easily. You'll have to fight hard. Get a lawyer. Write everything down. Don't let them bury this." Theron nodded, even though Jake couldn't see him. "Thanks, I'm not giving up. I'm doing this for Linden, for us." The next day, Theron met with a lawyer Jake recommended. She didn't sugarcoat anything. "Mistakes like this happen more than people think," she said plainly. "But you have a strong case. What they did was reckless and unnecessary." For the first time in days, Theron felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could change something. Meanwhile, Linden found her own way to fight back. She talked to local community groups and told her story. Her calm, honest words struck a chord with people, many of whom had stories or fears of police mistakes too. Neighbors who once stayed silent started to speak up. Some shared their own stories of wrong addresses, raids gone bad, or threats that should never have happened. The neighborhood's mood shifted from fear and shock to a quiet determination. But not everyone was on their side. Some people criticized them, saying the police had done what they had to do under tough conditions. One afternoon, sitting in their living room, the broken door still not fixed, Linden turned to Theron. "Do you think people will care, or will this just fade away?" Theron took her hand, his voice calm and sure. "We have to believe they'll care, and we have to keep speaking up. If we don't, nothing changes." Linden nodded. A small spark of resolve shone in her tired eyes. The investigation kept going, and each day Theron and Linden felt stronger in their fight. They weren't just doing this for themselves anymore. They were doing it for every other family who might one day find themselves in the same nightmare. But the more attention their story got, the more challenges came with it. One evening, Theron sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, eyes far away. Everything that had happened pressed hard on his mind. But then his thoughts drifted back to a different kind of stress, the kind he knew from the army. He remembered his first deployment with the 82nd Airborne, early mornings, endless drills, always ready for danger. Back then he thought he could handle anything, but nothing had prepared him for this. His own home turned into a war zone. Linden saw his faraway look and sat next to him. Her voice was gentle. "Tell me about it, Theron. About your time in the army." He looked at her, a small smile breaking through the tension. "It was tough. We trained to stay calm when everything was falling apart. Out there, you know who the enemy is." He paused, his eyes growing distant again. "But here the enemy is confusion, mistakes, fear. That's what makes it so hard." Linden squeezed his hand. "I've always admired your strength, but you don't have to hold this alone." Theron reached for her hand. "You're stronger than you think too," he said gently. Linden smiled, but her eyes showed a quiet resolve. She was a third-grade teacher in Tucson, used to calming scared kids and handling chaos with patience. "Kids trust me to keep them safe," she said. I want to believe we can keep ourselves safe too." Their bond kept them going, reminding them they weren't alone. But the damage ran deeper than either of them could admit. Linden's nights were restless. She'd wake up, shaking from the memory of the taser. Theron spent his days fighting a constant anger that boiled under his skin. One afternoon, Theron took Linden to a nearby park, hoping the open air would ease their heavy thoughts. The sun was warm, and kids laughed and played nearby, their voices a sharp contrast to the storm in Theron's chest. They sat quietly on a bench, watching life move on as if nothing had happened. Finally, Linden broke the silence. "Do you think people really understand what it's like? To be treated like a threat in your own home?" Theron shook his head. "Most don't. They see the uniform and the badge and think they're safe. But sometimes that safety is just an illusion." Linden squeezed his hand. "We have to tell our story, not just for us, but for everyone too afraid to speak up." Theron nodded, feeling new determination rising inside him. This was more than their story. It was a chance to push for change. When they got back to their apartment, Theron looked at the splintered doorframe, a scar that reminded them of that terrible night. "We'll rebuild," he said, "not just this place, but trust between us and the people meant to protect us." Linden smiled, hope flickering in her eyes. "And we'll make sure they listen." But healing wouldn't be quick, and the fight for justice was only beginning. News of what happened spread fast in Tucson. Local reporters covered it as a clear case of police misconduct. Some stories focused on Theron as a veteran, a man betrayed by those sworn to protect him. Others highlighted Linden as a teacher, an innocent victim. The community responded. Neighbors gathered outside the Duvall's apartment complex, holding signs, "Justice for Theron and Linden," and "Accountability now." Friends and co-workers donated money to help pay for lawyers and repairs, but not everyone was on their side. Online, strangers accused Theron and Linden of exaggerating. Some defended the police. Social media arguments turned ugly, filled with rumors and insults. At Linden's school, parents were split. Some thanked her for her bravery. Others worried about safety, asking if the raid meant trouble for the neighborhood. One parent, Sarah, caught Linden after class. "I'm so sorry for what you're going through," she said softly. "We're behind you." Linden smiled, feeling a little lighter. "Thank you, Sarah. That means a lot." But another parent, Mr. Johnson, cornered her in the parking lot. His voice was sharp. "I don't want my kid around any trouble. I hope this doesn't bring problems to the school." Linden looked him in the eye. "I understand, but this has nothing to do with the school. I'm still here for my students." The mixed support and criticism wore them down. Their private pain had become everyone's debate. One evening, watching the news coverage, Theron's frustration boiled over. "I can't believe how people twist this," he said. "They don't know us, but they act like they do." Linden took his hand. "We can't control what they say, but we can keep telling the truth. We can fight for what's right." They planned a community meeting at a local church. They invited neighbors, local leaders, and police officials to talk about what happened and how to stop it from happening again. The meeting was tense. Some police officers apologized and promised to review their procedures. Others defended the raid, saying the job was dangerous and mistakes happen. But despite the tension, something good came out of it. People from all sides listened. Some found common ground, a small step forward. But Theron and Linden knew it wouldn't be easy. Changing minds and fixing a broken system would take time, and their lawsuit was only just beginning. In a cramped office downtown, Theron sat across from his lawyer. The walls were crowded with law books, but none of that mattered as much as her words. "We have a strong case," she told him. "They used excessive force. The taser was unjustified, especially with the wrong address." Theron nodded, his face set with determination. "I want them held accountable, not just for us, but so no one else goes through this." His lawyer gave him a small, encouraging smile. "That's the right approach. We'll file a civil rights lawsuit. It won't be easy, but it's worth it." Walking out of the office, Theron felt tired but focused. This was the only path to justice. At home, Linden sorted through paperwork, helping him stay organized. No matter how hard things got, she stayed strong. "We have to be ready for them to fight dirty," she said. "They'll try to spin this any way they can." Theron looked at her with gratitude. "You're amazing." She gave him a soft smile. "We're amazing. Together." The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, court dates, and interviews. Theron faced officers who tried to justify the raid. He answered hard questions from lawyers. Reporters asked him the same thing over and over, but he never backed down. In one hearing, Theron spoke to the judge. "This isn't just about me and my wife. It's about trust. Trust that was broken. We need to fix it." Outside the courthouse, supporters held signs and chanted. Linden stood beside him, their hands joined tightly. Theron spoke at forums and rallies. He shared his story to push for better police training and stronger accountability. One night, after another long day, Theron and Linden sat on their porch, watching the city lights. "I never thought I'd be fighting a battle like this," Theron said quietly. Linden rested her head on his shoulder. "Neither did I, but together, we're stronger than any mistake." Still, the fight took its toll. They were tired. The stress and sleepless nights wore them down. Linden woke up from nightmares, sweating and shaking. At school, she struggled to focus, her mind replaying the raid. Theron's anger burned hot. He snapped at Linden sometimes. He avoided friends. He wondered if he was doing enough. One night, Linden sat at the kitchen table, tears falling. "I can't do this anymore, Theron," she whispered. "I'm so tired, so scared. I just want this to stop." Theron knelt beside her and took her hands. "I know," he said softly. "It's okay to feel that way." He pulled her close and let her cry in his arms. He was hurting too, but he knew they had to face it together. They found a therapist to help them cope. It wasn't easy, but it helped them talk, share their fears, and start to heal the wounds inside. The therapist said that after a traumatic experience, it's important to admit you're hurt, but also remember your strength. They also leaned on their community. Friends and neighbors helped by bringing food, doing chores, and just being there to listen. One night, Theron sat on his porch, looking at the city lights full of doubt. Was he doing the right thing? Was the fight worth it? His old friend Jake called, sensing his worry. "Hey man, how are you doing?" Jake asked. Theron paused, then shared, "I don't know, Jake. Sometimes I feel like I'm breaking. The anger, the stress, it's too much." Jake listened calmly, then spoke from experience. "This kind of fight is hard, but you can't quit, Theron. You're doing this for something more important than just you." Theron took a deep breath, feeling stronger from Jake's words. He realized he wasn't just fighting for Linden and himself, he was fighting for a better future where police mistakes lead to answers and communities feel safe. The next day, Theron and Linden woke up with a stronger purpose. They were still hurt and struggling, but they were ready to keep fighting. As they pushed forward, they found a truth that changed everything. Theron sat at his kitchen table. The lamp's soft light made long shadows on the papers spread out before him. The legal fight was taking a long time, but he'd found something new. proof that the raid wasn't just a simple mistake. He got an anonymous tip from someone inside the police who wanted to reveal bigger problems. The tip included emails and notes showing the warrant was rushed without proper checks. Officers were pushed to act fast, even with shaky information. Theron's heart raced as he read. This wasn't just one error. It was part of ongoing carelessness and bad communication. He called Linden right away. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but serious. When Linden arrived, Theron showed her the proof. Her eyes grew wide as she understood. "This changes everything," she said. "It means the department knew the dangers but didn't care." Together they gave this information to their lawyer and the news. The story spread fast, causing public anger and new demands for police changes. Community leaders asked for openness, and the police had to start an internal check. Officers from the raid faced punishment, and the department promised to fix how it handles warrants. Theron and Linden became symbols of a movement pushing for change. Their bravery encouraged others to speak up about their own bad experiences with police mistakes. But the journey wasn't easy. They faced pushback from some officials who tried to make the findings seem small or question the sources. Threatening messages came, and the couple had to be extra careful for their safety. Still, they wouldn't stop. One evening, at a public meeting, Theron spoke to a full room. "We can't accept a system that endangers innocent people," he said. "We have to demand answers, openness, and respect for our rights." Linden stood beside him, her voice firm. "Change starts with us. By sharing our stories and sticking together, we can build a safer, fairer community." The crowd clapped loudly. Theron looked at Linden, pride and thanks clear in his eyes. "We're making a difference," he whispered. She smiled, one step at a time. Even as things improved, the scars from that night stayed, a reminder of why the fight was needed. Months had passed since that terrible night. Though the pain was still there, Theron and Linden began to see signs of healing. The legal fight had moved forward, settlements were agreed to, and the police put new rules in place to stop similar mistakes. Theron stood outside their fixed apartment, the door now solid and whole. He touched the smooth wood, a small but real win. Linden was beside him, smiling honestly, though the memory of that night still showed in her eyes. They were rebuilding their lives, piece by piece. Theron went back to his daily life, but with a new goal. He helped local groups focused on police changes, sharing his story and helping others with the complex legal system. His military discipline now powered a different fight, one for fairness and community trust. Linden returned to teaching. Her classroom buzzed with kids' laughter and energy. She found strength in her students, who showed her how tough people can be. One afternoon after school, Linden and Theron went to a community event celebrating the changes their stories sparked. Neighbors, activists, and officials gathered, united by a shared goal of progress. A local council member spoke. "Because of Theron and Linden's courage, we've taken big steps towards answers and openness in our police," she said. "Their story inspired us all." Theron and Linden looked at each other, quietly seeing how far they'd come. But healing wasn't just about big wins. It was also in the small moments, quiet evenings together, laughter returning to their home, trust slowly growing back. One night, sitting on their porch watching the stars, Linden rested her head on Theron's shoulder. "We made it through," she whispered. Theron smiled, putting an arm around her. Together their journey had been painful, full of fear and unknowns, but it also brought them closer and gave them meaning. And though the scars stayed, so did their hope for a better future. Theron and Linden sat quietly in their living room. The soft evening light made long shadows on the walls. The journey they'd been through was still clear in their minds: the raid, the fear, the fight for justice. But now, a new part was starting. Theron looked at Linden, his voice calm but emotional. "We went through hell that night," he said, "but it taught me something vital. No matter how strong you think you are, you need to stand up, not just for yourself, but for everyone who can't." Linden nodded, her eyes bright. "It's bigger than just us," she said. "It's about making sure no one else suffers like we did. It's about trust, respect, and answers." Their story was more than a personal tragedy. It showed a larger problem, a system that sometimes failed the people it should protect. They knew change wouldn't come quickly, but every voice raised, every story told, was a step forward. Theron leaned in, sounding sincere. "If there's one thing I want people to remember, it's this. Don't stay quiet. Speak up if you see unfairness. Support people who are hurting. Demand better from those in charge." Linden added, "And remember, behind every news story, every number, there are real people, families, friends, neighbors, whose lives are changed forever." They paused, letting their words settle. Theron continued, "We all have a part to play. Whether it's learning, helping out, voting, or just listening with care. Change starts with us." Linden smiled gently. "And it starts now." As the scene would end, their message would stay. Clear, strong, and urgent. Together, Theron and Linden's story was a call to action, a reminder that justice isn't just a word, it's a duty we all share. If their journey touched you, take a moment to think about your own community. Reach out, get involved, be the change you wish to see. Because when we stand together, no mistake is too big to correct, and no voice is too quiet to count.